Hello, hello, and welcome to a very special edition of SBJ Live, Advice to My Younger Self, 3 Inaugural Game Changers. I am thrilled to welcome you all here and the ladies that we have today on the panel. I do have a little bit of housekeeping that I need to get to before we can get going. So welcome to everybody who's tuning in from all over the place. I want to direct your attention to the bottom right-hand corner of your screen if I could. There'll be 3 important buttons there that we'll use throughout. And so I want everyone to be familiar and comfortable. First is our chat. And the chat function is really for you all to use throughout the session. Introduce yourself, say who you're with, say where you're from. And, I recognize some other names on the chat, talk to each other. Next to that is our questions button. There will be no formal Q&A during this session. So if you have a question, if you think of something, if something being said sparks a question, please just drop it right in there. We'll be monitoring it throughout, and we will try to weave in as many as we can. And then the final button, for those people who are familiar with SBJ Live, you might not have used this one before, is our polls button. When I was researching for this session, I talked to a whole bunch of folks who had been involved in the inaugural SBJ Game Changers. And so they gave me a ton of fun facts and figures. And so we did a little bit of trivia. And so you'll find 2 trivia questions in there. I encourage you to take them right away. The answers aren't going to come during our session. If you hold out, and we're going to put a couple more in later. So it would be terrific if we could, circle back to these and see, how y'all did. That does it for housekeeping. In 1 second, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists, but I figure as we're looking back at 2011, maybe we do a little time travel and take a snapshot as to what was happening at that time. So I did a little research, and here's where we were at. 2011, specifically, we were looking at October 10th, which was the edition that our first Game Changers came out in. A Hugh Jackman movie called Real Steel topped the weekend box office in its premiere weekend. I don't recall it. I don't know if any of you do. That was a hit. However, number 4 that weekend was something that everyone on this call probably is very familiar with, which was Moneyball, a must watch in the sports industry. So, yep, that was number 4 at that very weekend. The most popular song in the U.S. was We Found Love by Rihanna with Calvin Harris. However, there was a real up-and-comer named Adele who was starting to top a few of the charts as well. Wow. So there's a real wild jump. Occupy Wall Street protests were in full swing throughout the country that weekend. That was going on. And on that day in history, we did lose tech giant Steve Jobs at the age of 56 on that very same day. So a lot was going on. I don't know how many of you remember all of those, some of those, but it gives you a little framework for where we were. Back down in Charlotte, North Carolina that day, it was clear and a little bit chillier than usual. And SBJ was just putting out our very first Game Changers class edition in the magazine, of which the 3 women you see on your screen were a part of, along with the other ladies here you'll see on this list. So we are thrilled to have all 3 of you here. We thank you for your generosity of time and insights that you'll share with us. And I'm going to turn it over to you all, if one by one, and we'll start with you because you're at the top of my screen. If you could give us your name, the current roles that you're filling, and what it was you were doing when you were named a Game Changer way back when.
Thank you, Jen. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is a really exciting thing for all of us inaugural Game Changers. I have spent 85% of my career in professional tennis, which is where I was when I was named an inaugural Game Changer. But I just stepped away from 3.5 wild and very busy years in pro pickleball as a strategic advisor, but acting as a acting CEO and a co-CEO most of that time. Major League Pickleball is the co-ed team format that has grown from 8 teams to 24 teams. Sports Business Journal just published an article this morning that the latest team is like a $16 million valuation, which they started at 100,000. So it blows my mind. But Major League Pickleball is the league that like LeBron James and Patrick Mahomes and Drew Brees and a lot of the celebrities have invested in. So I've just stepped away from that and took the summer off for the first time in 40 years, and I'm excited to plot my next chapter. And when I was specifically named Game Changer in 2011, I was the tournament director of the Connecticut Open, which was the tune-up to the U.S. Open, an important part of the U.S. Open series. I think we have Deanne Pownell, head of corporate partnerships in USTA, on with us. Congrats on finishing the U.S. Open. I don't know how you're even on this call, Deanne. But anyway, I just, I remember being so honored that I was 10 years out of being the CEO of the WTA, but receiving this award alongside like impressive CEOs and CMOs and other C-level executives. I was very honored at the time, and even more now, seeing that it's become such an annual honor over the years. So thank you, Sports Business Journal, for shining a spotlight on deserving women in sports.
Jackie, how about you?
I'm Jackie Woodward, and when I was named a founding game changer, I was head of media, digital, and sports and entertainment at Miller Coors, as you can see here, now Molson Coors. So I spent 15 years at McDonald's running sports and entertainment, both domestically and globally, and then was in the beer business for 9 years. Before moving on to senior executive roles at General Mills, and then, as you saw, as Chief Marketing Officer of Krispy Kreme Donuts and Bojangles restaurants. So I like to say I've just had a great career in fun food and helping fun food drive relevance with its consumers. So I've always been brand side, but driving relevance is what gets me up in the morning, what gets me going. And with all the brands I've worked on, sports and entertainment just play significant roles in making that happen. I left corporate America a couple of years ago to form my own consultancy. And so I am a solopreneur with a group called Chameleon Collective. All of us are solopreneurs. There's about 100 of us across varying fields in marketing, technology, sales, e-commerce. And I serve as with clients as a fractional chief marketing officer, and in some cases, interim chief marketing officer. I'm also now certified as an executive coach. So I too, Anne, would just echo everything you were so eloquent about how important this was at the time to start to shine a light on women in the industry, because there are more of us than we perhaps knew. And if anything, that has grown over the past 15 years. And I mean, I have a little bit of imposter syndrome, I have to admit. I don't think I could make this list today because there are so many amazing women that are now really making a mark in our industry. And it is really wonderful to see. So to be in on the ground floor of that was just a real milestone in my career.
Thank you, Tamera.
Yes, hello, I'm Tamera Green. I am thrilled to be here with these wonderful ladies. I've known Jackie a long time. Our paths crossed many times, including when we were both named. I was at the agency that serviced Miller at the time. We didn't work directly together, but certainly it was a big client for GMR, which is where I was serving as VP of a group account director. So I was working on other alcoholic beverages for my first time with Jim Beam and learning my way there. Gillette and P&G were clients, so a lot of big name brands. I'm now transitioning from my role as Chief Comms Officer at Tepper Sports and Entertainment. That is the organization that owns the Carolina Panthers, Charlotte FC, and Bank of America Stadium. I'm going to be, well, I am now part of the faculty for the University of South Carolina School of Journalism and Mass Communications, and we are collaborating with the Hospitality Retail Sports Management School to create a sports media entertainment enterprise here in Charlotte. It's an institute that will provide a graduate program that will include courses from the sports management and the J School. So it's really a unique offering. We'll launch next fall. So we're in the process of creating curriculum and courses and finding office space in Charlotte and all the fun things that are part of building something. And that is, been a big part of my career. This is an exciting opportunity to kind of put that exclamation point on your career to help those that are getting started in the field, or to help those who are in the field and want to enhance or grow from where they are and what their schooling has been or their experience has been. We've got a really committed group of people that are really ready to deliver at the highest level and make this something really special for our industry. And, remembering getting this, much like Jackie and Ann said, I was flattered and humbled. I am a comms person. I'm a behind the scenes person. So to have myself there, or to even be the one here, I'm usually prepping the person that's going to be sitting where I'm sitting today, or even back then in 2011. But to be part of an inaugural class, a founding class, is really very special. And thank you for honoring us in that way and inviting us to be here to talk with folks.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. And I appreciate both the kind words to SBJ and kind of a little snapshot into how that was all received for you. I think I'd like to talk about maybe the important role that mentorship plays. We have a wide variety of folks in this chat here, ranging from students, like you're talking about, Tamara, right now in sports management classes, all the way through, well-progressed career execs. So kind of how have, you looked to other people, both men and women, which I think is an important factor, who some of your early mentors were, whether they were male or female, how that changed your experience and the dynamic and the learning. It is anyone's ball.
I'll keep going. I've gotten this question a lot through the decades of working in sports marketing, and I feel like the ones that I would highlight are the ones that I think about, things that they told me, taught me, or offered me. And there were so many out there that did, but I'd be remiss in not mentioning Max Mulliman, who gave me my start. He was a pioneer in this business, started PSLs. He brought the Hornets to Charlotte, brought the Panthers to Charlotte, helped Rick Hendrick get started in NASCAR with Hendrick Motorsports, brought the first packaged goods company to the sport with Procter & Gamble and Folgers, and later Tide. It's really hard not to be thankful for him. We lost him last December, but he gave me my opportunity. He taught me the business. And we, at that time, when I was at Mulliman Marketing, we worked with, now everyone knows, Roger Goodell, but back then he was our liaison and who we worked with on the effort to secure the franchise for the Carolinas. And, his guidance and encouragement, helped me to understand and get comfortable playing in a bigger playing field, right, in that sports world. And then lastly, Steve Moore, who led Coke's Olympic program. He was Coke brand manager. When we started working together, he was the brand manager for Mellow Yellow, and we were bringing Days of Thunder to the racetrack with Kyle Petty and that wonderful Mellow Yellow race car. So a lot of great folks. When I started in the business, women really weren't at the table. I was the youngest and the only, much like Anne and Jackie were, I'm sure. And I think now it's just wonderful to see that it is not an exception, that we're sitting at the table. It's expected for women to be at the table. And there's so many women who are doing so many great things out there and have done them. But it's wonderful to see that it is more routine. It's more expected. Now, do you still have those moments in time? We've got an MLB umpire now, right? So we do still celebrate, oh, this is the first time a woman's done this. With the Panthers, we had Christy Coleman and the president of the Raiders, first time two NFL teams played each other, and the leaders were both women. So there are still those milestones. Dawn Staley, was almost the Knicks head coach, right? So we still do celebrate some of those kinds of moments, but it is much more expected that women are at the table in the boardroom.
Yeah, that was a good point. As I asked the question about mentorship, I wonder the availability even of female mentors for you all 15 years back, whether, just because of the preponderance of men there, that was going to be who you guys look to for guidance and counsel. So Jackie, Anne, if you guys want to offer up your experience.
That was certainly my experience as well. In fact, being a sports and entertainment marketer in brand companies meant that there weren't a lot of people like me, even within my company. And so it's one of the reasons why I've become an executive coach, is because I'm such a strong believer in mentorship and what coaching can do to unlock people's potential. But I had none of it. The only person who I could really point to was my boss at McDonald's, Dean Barrett, who's now retired. But Dean, another man, Dean dragged me along with everything, whether it was NBA, whether it was FIFA, whether it was the IOC, Michael Jordan, he dragged me along to everything. And like Tamera talked about, really taught me everything I still use to this day. I mean, I like to say I learned my craft at McDonald's. I learned leadership at Miller Coors, which we can talk more about that later. But, for instance, in 1995, after McDonald's had announced it was going to be a top sponsor after years of being a U.S. Olympic Committee sponsor, the Nagano Games were right around the corner in 1998. He was in the midst of negotiating the 10-year Disney alliance for McDonald's. So he said, Jackie, go over to Nagano and negotiate the contract with the Nagano Organizing Committee. I was like, what? It's Japan. It's our first IOC deal, because the 96 Atlanta Olympics were under the old USOC deal. It's our first IOC deal. It's Japan, and I'm a woman. And he was like, get it done. And so I did. Failure is not an option in those times. And so I'm eternally grateful to Dean, but really mentorship was just not a part of my world. And like I said, as I advanced through my career and realized the positive aspects, it's a big reason why I'm a coach today.
That's terrific. And how does your experience mirror?
Turn this off. Yes, I completely agree that mentorship with Jackie and Tamera, mentorship comes in all shapes and sizes. And sometimes you don't even know it's happening, and it happens. Mm-hmm. And I cannot emphasize it enough for all the young people out there listening in on our call. I was very lucky. I started my career with IMG, who I started on the event side, answering the phones, taking ticket orders, getting paid zero money and no benefits or job security. My friends all thought I was crazy that I was doing this with a Duke honors degree. But very early on, the head of women's tennis at IMG was Stephanie Tollison, a woman. Mm-hmm. And IMG had all the top women players, and they owned a very large number of WTA events. And so Stephanie was that rare, strategic thinker who also was very savvy politically and very savvy operationally. And she took me under her wing very early on and taught me so much and had endless patience for my million questions and believed in me before I believed in myself. And I will never, ever forget that. And because she was a woman in a very senior role, I just thought it was normal that women could be senior in sports. So that was my initial thinking. And I worked in events, I worked with the players, I worked with Virginia Slims when Virginia Slims was the global sponsor of the world, very closely with IMG, very closely with Stephanie. And then I became the first CEO of this integrated WTA tour and first woman of any major sport, largely thanks to Stephanie's helping me to get there. And then once I got there, I sort of inherited a very thin player pool. We were losing Virginia Slims, so the finances were looking very much in the deficit, in the red. And so I turned to David Stern, who had just turned around the NBA in the early 90s. I called him cold. He took my call. He invited me to lunch. We had a 4-hour lunch, and he just really taught me how to focus on the basics of turning a sport around. And he really helped us to turn women's tennis around, to get the players more active, bigger television contracts, global television contracts that IMG also helped with a lot of that. And then David Stern and the NBA and the WNBA was very interested in what we women's tennis were doing around age eligibility and protecting young athletes. And so we shared all that information. So it really started this very unique and surprising and unexpected collaboration with David and the NBA. And then lastly, I would say my mother, Corrine Person, was probably one of my most meaningful mentors. She was a teacher with a lot of degrees and raised 3 kids, but she had a real savvy for business. And she always taught me to be true to myself. So whatever problem I presented to her that I was having in business, she said, Anne, she'd quote Shakespeare, to thine own self be true. Be true to yourself. Follow your heart, follow your integrity. And so I would say all 3 of those very different mentors had a huge impact on my career, and I am forever grateful. And I try as much as I possibly can to mentor young people as a result.
That's wonderful. I think as you guys are talking about that experience, it kind of leads into my next question, because I'm seeing a lot of these skills kind of bubble up. If you had to kind of crystallize the skills that you think are most critical to being a successful leader in the sports industry today, not necessarily a successful women sports leader in the industry, just a successful leader in the industry, which is kind of what we were just talking about here. And, tenacity clearly shines through, and being genuine, all those things that have come up in these examples that you all have given. But if you could isolate to a skill or a trait or 2, what would you guys say is most critical to that success?
I'm happy to go first. People talk about hard skills and soft skills, and I tend to call them hard skills and essential skills because they're not soft at all. They're essential. So hard skills, you know what? You have to know your stuff. You just have to. And as women, I'm interested in Tamera and Anne, if you agree with this. I think we have to know our stuff better than the guys do.
I was going to say less room for error, right?
I do still think that is true. In fact, I just saw a statistic yesterday that said for women CEOs, 38% of women CEOs are second guessed in many of the decisions that they make, compared to 27% of men CEOs who are second guessed with any decision they make. So we have to work. We still have to work harder. I'm sorry, but that is true. We still have to work harder, and I think we still have to know our stuff and be more on the ball than the guys do. I wish it were different. It's not different. Essential skills, though, are where it really all comes together. And so, I like to say, for example, influencing. At McDonald's, we used to say you're 50% politician and 50% marketer. Because when you're in a franchise organization, if you aren't bringing franchisees along with you, you don't have a job. And I like to say, for people who say, I don't want to be in sales, guess what? We're all in sales. Everybody's selling somebody. I'm selling my ideas. Somebody else may be selling a partnership. A CEO may be selling his board. We're all selling all the time. And so that's why I call them essential skills, because you have to be rock solid killer at your hard skills, but those essential skills of influencing and listening and collaborating and bringing ideas and helping them become bigger and bringing people along with you and selling those in, that's where real success happens.
You're getting a lot of thumbs up in the chat on that one, Jackie. It was definitely resonating with some folks. Other skills?
I'm happy to jump in. I agree with everything Jackie just said. There's nothing more important than the skill of taking diverse, unique stakeholders and bringing them together around a common goal. It's a sales job, it's a marketing job, it's a persuasion job, it's a credibility job. It really takes so many other skills into account. There are so many skills that go into being successful in any industry, especially sports. Leadership by example, hard work, tenacity. But for me, people skills and relationship management really is probably top of my list. Like really learning how to grow relationships and strengthen relationships and value relationships. Engendering trust in your colleagues at any level, not just executives, but the entry level people, the receptionists, everyone. It's just for me, that's been sort of my golden asset in my career, is just learning how to really grow, strengthen, and value relationships and the management of those relationships.
I agree with what my esteemed colleagues have said, so I won't repeat any of that because they said it so eloquently, but I would just add on a couple of maybe smaller things about communication. If you're talking about being a leader, I think communication with your team, the people below you, above you, becomes just critical. And you have to be real with people, right? Clarity is kindness. Just because you're being direct or focused in your messaging, that's not a bad thing, because it's better that someone understands what the expectations are, what the needs are, or where we have had a gap in what we're doing. So I do believe that clarity is kindness, as I like to say, and that's part of being real with people and having those real conversations, and making sure that you're communicating with your team and others often. That people part, and that you talk about, I think it's a secret sauce. We're dealing in athletes and games and products and events, but at the end of the day, you're dealing with people and personalities. And very early on, if you can think about that, and how do you develop relationships? You're respectful, you follow up, you respond to people. Just because they don't have a high level title doesn't mean you don't return their email or their phone call or meet them when they ask. And that takes time, but it's part of helping our industry, helping others, and it's doing the right thing, and others are watching you. So as you do the right thing along the way, you're also quietly mentoring someone else to carry that forward in that same kind of way.
That's terrific. I think, while you all identified similar skills, that, there was a lot of overlap, and yet there were some, really unique angles kind of through all of that. And I think a lot of that, you can learn your industry and know your stuff and hit that hard stuff. The other stuff develops over time, right? You have to just give yourself the grace and the experience and show that respect up and down the line. Tamera, I think that was a really important part, right? I think that everybody, you go in that respect is deserved from everybody. And so when you show that, you receive that back in return. I would assume it's safe to say that it's not always smooth sailing over the course of your careers. And I think sometimes a lot of things we learn most are from when maybe we stumble or, wish we handled something differently. So I think there's some value in if we could discuss, if you could all think of maybe the hardest lesson that you've learned during your career. I think that provides a lot of useful insight. You've all clearly, there's no career ending kind of work culture. So, it's you come back stronger, and hearing those things, I think, can be super heartening and motivating. So if anybody has one to share, it would be terrific.
I'm happy to kick off here.
Yeah.
They say we make our own luck, but I'm very fortunate and to have had so many different kinds of opportunities in pro tennis, as well as pro pickleball, the player side, the tournament side, the sponsorship side, the governance side. But the hardest lesson that I learned was that discrimination still exists. When I became pregnant with I was the CEO of the WTA, first female CEO of any major sport, and the youngest of any major sport. When I took the job, I promised my husband we would not put off creating a family. And when I announced that I was pregnant, WTA is very global sport, 55 events in 35 countries, all over the world. And the head of the German Tennis Federation said to me, "How can the CEO be pregnant?" And I said, "I don't know what you call that." I was stunned, and I was shocked. I was all of 34 years old. But I said to him, "I don't know what you call that statement in your country, but in the United States of America, that's discrimination." And I never heard from him again. But, it was just such a blatant reminder that it's not easy for women to have major jobs that are all consuming, and weekends and evenings and travel, and to raise a family. Whether it's the perception, like this federation head, or the reality of, I would say I used to drive up and down I-95 feeling like my hair was on fire, raising two kids and holding such a big job. So I'd like to think that we're headed in the right direction with all of the above, but as Billie Jean King says, we've still got a ways to go.
If I could just jump in right there, it dovetails perfectly. You might have seen on your screen pop up some new polls. There were two questions that we asked back in 2011 about the state of women working in the sports industry. And so we were fascinated to see kind of how that changed, if it changed, if those percentages have gone down. So if I could just call everybody's attention to that. We are flying through the session, so we'll revisit it shortly, but I do want to let Tamera and Jackie speak to that previous question, if you could.
Well, first of all, you said it has not always looked like that. In fact, I worry sometimes that our young people just see us as being successful without recognizing all the bumps in the road and all the times. I mean, there's been more than one time over the last couple of decades where I came home and said to my husband, "I think I'm going to be fired tomorrow." And one time it actually did happen. So it's all a part of bringing your career forward and trying to make the smart decisions that you can. And so the hardest lesson for me is actually the one that I was just talking about, that's such an essential skill, and that's learning how to influence and learning how to build those relationships that Anne talked about, learning empathy. I'm kind of a hard charger. I mean, I like to tell people I'm the eldest child of a naval captain. Is there anything else you need to know? And generally the answer is nope, I got you. And so I really had to learn, by the way, my brother and sister would call that bossy. I've really had to learn. I usually get to things very quickly. I'm a huge proponent of change. I'm not a person who resists change. And so I tend to jump into things, and I fail to bring people along with me. I really had to learn that lesson. And particularly now as a consultant, I mean, if I'm not bringing people along with me, I don't have a business. So bringing people along and listening and helping them understand my ideas and being open to their ideas was a hard lesson to learn. But it has paid dividends for me. I will say, once I got myself into a place where I could get past my own inadequacies and really embrace the fact that a good idea can come from anywhere. And it really makes it rewarding to lead a team.
I do want to say something about the word bossy. You know, perhaps I got called that too. Yes, I did. But have you ever heard of a man being called bossy? So I think we have to be sure we get that one out of our vernacular, friends, because it's really not fair. I think we would call a man assertive if he were trying to make something happen and galvanize a group of people. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's one of my my key things that I like to think about, of what do we use in our language that perpetuates some of that differentiation, and how can we sort of lean into what is more normal for both and all as we describe things. I'll go a little different on the hardest lesson. There were so many hard lessons, and I think you were right, Jen, when you said you learn more from those, right? Because you've got to work harder to, okay, now what do I do to overcome that? But I think for me, one of the harder things, you get excited about hiring someone, you love working with these people, but often you have to part ways with them. And even when it is, and most of the time it's better for them, it's better for the organization, it's still a big tug and it's hard. And those are some of the more difficult conversations often as leaders that we have to have. And you think about all the great opportunities that you give people. And often when you have to make those departure decisions, you in some ways are giving those people the gift of go be happy, go find where you can, shine if things weren't going the way that maybe the organization wanted. Oftentimes it means the person wasn't happy or wasn't in the right place, and it's often not very comfortable for them either.
Those were all terrific. I do want to jump for a second to our polls, because I'm curious to see, because it does speak to a lot of what we were seeing. I want to see if I can see the results here. Jasmine, I can't see the results here. Let's see. All right, hopefully we can have someone drop those in the chat, because I can't. Oh, maybe when I submit my vote. Oh, there we go. Okay. So if we're talking about the old school questions that were asked of the game changers, the first question was, have you ever had a woman as your direct supervisor during your sports industry career? Back in 2011, that was 49% said yes. This is a little bit less scientific than the polling we did back then, because we've just asked the participants here, but we are at 76%. So that is something that we're seeing trending in the right direction. And similarly, do you think women face greater obstacles to career success, specifically in the sports industry? And this is very interesting. It was about a 50-50 split way back in 2011. 88% now said greater obstacles. So that number is actually significantly increased. Whoa. Yeah. That kind of knocked me on my tush. I'm surprised about that. Yeah, little food for thought there, everybody. I don't want to hit the fun ones too. Little history of game changers, and you all on the panel can chime in if you wanted to. Before we named SBJ Game Changers to be Game Changers, what was one of the alternate titles that did not make the list? Was it Herstory Makers, Wonder Women, or Femme Force? One of these was legitimately in play to be the inaugural class when we went with Game Changers. Any takers?
I like Game Changers.
We made the right call. The most people
Landed in the right spot.
picked herstory makers. In fact, it was Wonder Women. And lastly, on our Game Changer history trivia, how many Game Changers were selected in the inaugural year? We did flash them on the screen at the beginning, so if you're a good counter, you know our answer. But was it 23, 35, or 49 in the original class? The answer was 49, which most people thought it was 35. Oh no, 23 followed by 35, not realizing how large the class was. Anecdotally, when I was talking to the gentleman who first did the inaugural class of Game Changers, they felt it was very significant to have a number like a 49 and not a neat round number. They didn't want to go 40. Obviously, we already had 40 under 40. They didn't want the number to dictate the women that were chosen. Instead, they wanted the accomplishments. They wanted this to be a very motivational and inspirational list. Hard to find the right fit, and so they wanted to let the honorees set what that number was, and whether that number was 23 or whether it was 74. 49 is where we landed. So that one stumped our very own Abe Madcore, who thought it was a much smaller number. So good on you on the first class. We are running so tight on time. We should have made this a double session, and I don't want to keep our panelists. I appreciate it. To wrap the session, let's just, if you could briefly, before we hit our quick fires, what are you most excited about for this upcoming generation in women in sports? When you're looking ahead to this new group, whether they're finishing up their sports management curriculum, they're in an entry-level role, as you look ahead, and again, sorry about tight on time, but what gets you the most excited thinking about this new
I just think it's our industry is growing and expanding constantly. The games are still at the center and the core of it, but you think about all the multifaceted aspects of what goes into the expectation for a fan when they come to one of Anne's tennis events, or all the things that Jackie did. The game is still, like I said, is at the center of it, but you've got expectations about that broader experience where you've got social media. I mean, football was one day a week long ago, right? Now it is 24/7. Fans are expecting content from the teams. So there's so many more opportunities. There are full-time photographer and videographer opportunities with teams. There are influencers and social strategists and content creators. I mean, there's just so many more elements and aspects because of just the constant growth. And we're fortunate to be in an industry that is constantly growing and expanding. So embrace it.
That's terrific.
I think she's 100% correct. I would only add, I think this industry has been rather slow to change over our time, and it feels like it's catching up fast. And so I'm sorry to hear 88% think that there's not opportunity. I'm happy to hear there's more people who've had women bosses, but I would say opportunity is yours to grab. Go get it, go get it. And I think there's more today, and it's starting to come even more so. It's going to be really interesting, Tamera, to see what your curriculum winds up being, because there is so much opportunity today. I think you're right.
I couldn't have said it better than Tamera and Jackie. I think they're spot on, and I encourage everybody to go for it. As Sheryl Sandberg says, lean in, advocate for yourselves, because this is a much more multidimensional industry than it was back in 2011. And there's so many different ways to participate and to utilize your skills and to follow your dreams. It's a very exciting, it's a fun business, but it's a lot of hard work. But there's so many different opportunities to explore.
I don't think we could put a better bow on it than that. We are tossing the quick fires out the window. Tamera, Jackie, Anne, thank you so much for your time. I could talk to you all afternoon. There's just so much out there. And thank you all to the contribution you guys have made all these years to the industry, continue to make today. in new ways, which is great that, you've all evolved your careers to still find, new ways to impact the current group, the future groups of leaders in sports business. And it's a service to all of us to have you all out there. So congratulations on being a 15-year game changer. Thank you for being part of this inaugural class. And I wish everybody continued success. Thank you, everybody who participated in the
Thank you.
chat.
Thank you,
Thank you
Sports
so much.
Journal. Thank you.
Thank you so much.